Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London. Today I'm looking at a book which comes to us from Sweet and Maxwell, Thomson Reuters organisation. It's called Medical Negligence. It'd be known very well to many of you as a standard textbook in its area. It's a specialist area. This edition is the 6th edition for 2021 and it's been written and edited by Michael Jones. The book is an important book for a number of reasons. I do a number of cases in this area, but as with many areas of law today, it's always useful to revise what you know because things do change. And certainly that is the case in this particular area, notwithstanding the changes in the way that we've been doing our processes, in other words, the cloud video platform hearings. Hopefully we're going to return to the normal orthodox way of doing cases, especially when they're highly contentious, as attended parties hearings in the courts. I've given the title of our book review the following: the 30th anniversary edition of this important statement on medical negligence, because, believe it or not, it's 30 years ago since the book first appeared. I'm actually recording this in January 2022, but the book did come in the autumn of last year. There's the book. Let's have a look at it. There's the front of it. Standard, very much the standard structure, house structure. That's the spine, nothing on the back. Sweet and Maxwell are to be congratulated as usual. It's an important book. Again, what they're doing now, which is interesting, Thomson Reuters has got a little ad at the back telling us a little bit about some of the books in the series, which I think is useful. This is not a series which is actually linked. So what you have got mentioned here is the Common Law Library of Charlesworth and Percy on negligence and Clark and Linsell on tort and so forth. But in fact, it's not part of that series at all. It's just what I consider a main specialist textbook. The actual index, as you can see there, is by paragraph numbering. And in fact, the paragraph numbering is quite detailed and very helpful indeed. Very much the house style of Sweet and Maxwell. So there's a legal taxonomy at the beginning which sets out how you use the index, and it's quite useful to know how to use the index because that corresponds with what you have in the contents section at the front of the book. Right at the back you've got a glossary of medical terms, extremely helpful if I may say so. Going back to my early days when I was actually doing the bar course, we used to get a little glossary of medical terms, which I did find in those days very helpful, but that was rather a long time ago. This is up to date, so if you're looking for anything specific, you've got a very useful glossary. Moving to the front, this is the front page here, 6th edition, Michael Jones. Michael is, of course, Solicitor of the Supreme Court and Emeritus Professor of Law at the University of Liverpool. And what we've got is a list of, there's a blurb there, and you can see the first edition came out in 1991. And of course, this new one is for 2021. And there is a dedication. Now, we only review books we like, we don't review rubbish, and we only review books which we think are important. The reason for that is because people have spent a lot of time on this book, and it's not right for us to just say we don't like a book. I'm not wasting my time on that. I will say why I like this and why it's important. Do read the preface, because that sets out where we are. Obviously it was written a little while ago, but we've had a lot of problems for the last 2 years with the pandemic. What the author has done, it's dated August 2021 with his preface, but he's given us an indication of some of the case law, the more recent case law that's come in. Then you've got the table of contents. As I say, you can cross-refer the contents with the index, depending on what you're looking for. It's a detailed contents section. Then a lot of cases, of course, as usual. Then after that, we are moving to statutes. The reason I'm slowing down with showing the book, but it's heavy, so I don't want to keep it up for too long. Then you've got the standard statutory instruments there. Then you've got civil procedure rules, which of course are important again in medical negligence cases. The practice directions, not too many of them. Protocols we've got. Then we've got the national legislation. which again is quite important. Then European and international, and then after that European legislation itself. There's bound to be, for many years to come, an overlap with what is happening, notwithstanding the Brexit stuff. We are still going to have a lot of European links. Then we get to the main text, and you can see the structure. You've got your paragraph numbering on the side there. You've got footnotes, some of which are more detailed, as you can see, than others. My advice, of course, is read through the body copy of the text. Try to avoid the footnotes because they are a distraction depending on what you're looking for. But of course it starts off with medical negligence in context, and it sets the scene, I think, quite nicely. Then you get into the realms of contract. Then you start going through the errors in damages and so forth. Diagnosis rather, so sorry. Then you've got causation in fact, which is a big issue, of course. Just got a case on at the moment with causation. Obviously causation is a very big area in the book, and in fact quite helpful, I think, because it is the area that where there is fairly substantial dispute between the parties as to what is actually has been going on, and what is actually something that the judge will have to determine. So I think that the causation element is very much to the fore now in matters concerning negligence. So what do I say about the book? Well, Elizabeth and I chatted about the book, and I've actually written this review, and I've said that Michael Jones offers us here a comprehensive and authoritative analysis of the potential legal liabilities of what we now call healthcare professionals. That's the whole lot of people, and hospitals, arising out of the provision of healthcare in the 6th edition of Medical Negligence, which appeared towards the end of 2021. Now, obviously the word healthcare is the current word that we use, and it's a much more general word. The principal focus is on the law of negligence as it applies in the medical context, but the book also includes extensive coverage of consent to medical treatment. This is very important, of course, at the moment with the difficulties of vaccinations and so on. Defective products, confidentiality, the liability of hospitals, because they've got a very substantial insurance cover for any liability, defences, and of course the limitation period. The principles then are applied to the assessment of damages, and of course we can use the general guide from the Judicial College, and of course we've also got procedural issues mentioned. But of course no one book stands alone, because there are going to be a number of different sources that you may need to go to depending on the type of brief that you've got. The 6th edition remains as a comprehensive statement, in our view, of the law of medical negligence in England and Wales, and there are appropriate comments made about the Commonwealth jurisdiction, which I think will be very helpful to some. And Jones, of course, gives us a 30th anniversary edition, which is fully up to date, including a discussion of relevant statutory provisions and Commonwealth case law. And I'll list them now because I think they're quite important, because we haven't, during the pandemic, there's been a stranger, rather more different approach to case law. But these are the cases that are covered. Barclays Bank PLC and various claimants in 2020. That's from the UK Supreme Court. Shembury and Marshall 2020, again from the Court of Appeal, and Bell and Tavistock and Portman National Health Service Foundation Trust, again in 2020. And there are, of course, other courts, to name but a few, who are covered. And there is, of course, a very detailed and useful discussion of developing case law on the Mental Capacity Act, still not been amended, plus the following areas depending on what you might be looking for. And the list I've got here, which I think will be quite helpful for you: a discussion of the emerging tort of misuse of private information, full reference to relevant professional guidance issued by the GMC, that's Decision Making and Consent in 2020, a useful appendices on NHS indemnity, very important again, pre-action protocol for the resolution of clinical disputes as part of the White Book area and a detailed glossary of medical terms. And the key features of the Jones edition of Medical Negligence for 2022, because that's when I'm recording this, provides us with a thorough analysis of the tort of negligence as it applies to the provision of health care. And there's a discussion which I found very helpful on the liability of doctors as well as dentists, nurses and pharmacists, because obviously negligence is a broad brush coverage about the duty of care, the breach of the duty, the causation and the damage. Now, Jones also covers the general principles of medical negligence and covers specific areas such as consent to medical treatment, defective products, confidentiality and the liability of hospitals, emerging issues relating to medical negligence practice, accidents, access to treatment patient autonomy, very important at the moment of course, and complaints. And there's also thorough coverage of defences and limitation, which I think will be helpful to counsel. And there's an explanation of the general principles as they apply to medical negligence, which many of us will know. But frankly, as I said earlier, it's always useful to have a refresher, because it's amazing what is changing, and it's always important to keep as up to date as possible. Let me conclude by saying that Michael Jones has also expanded the general principles by applying them to specific areas such as this area of consent and the area of confidentiality, both of which are highly controversial. And he does analyse the current case law authorities well, and he interprets applicable legislation, giving us what I think is a clear, concise analysis applicable to generalist and specialist practitioners. You can't be without, in my view, this excellent new edition if you practice any area of medical negligence claims, and that includes the lower as well as the higher areas. And I say that because I don't normally do the high value matters, I do the lower ones, but it's still very helpful. Date of publication of this new hardback 6th edition is cited as at the 22nd of September 2021. Let's have a final look at the book. There it is, black cover, it's hardback, there's the spine, nothing on the back. Now when I open it in the middle, you can see what I mean. This is failure to attend or treat a patient. Now you can see you've got the paragraph numbering and you've got a lot of footnotes. The footnotes of course include the statutes, they include the case law and all the other relevant detail, but you can see there's a lot of information there. And again, just taking another, this is causation. As I say, causation is a very important area. And I will finally say that I believe, bearing in mind where we're going with the litigation at the moment, that this is a book about causation as much as anything else, because that's where the front of the problem with medical negligence now is. That is my opinion. Of course, obviously other people will have other views. But thank you very much to everyone concerned. Special thanks to Sweet and Maxwell for producing a first-class book. I'm really delighted to have the new edition for the library in 2022. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.